Hello! Happy to see you back here. This is something I have been so excited and waiting to do since I started this whole channel. Because I love watching every single one that comes up on my page I click on. We are here for the mid-year book freakout tag. Woohoo! So far this year I have read 27 books. My goal is currently 65 or 70, whichever one I reach is the goal. I actually took it down from last year because I feel like last year I was so focused on reading as many books as possible. I feel like I didn't really retain some of the things that I was reading as much as I wanted to. So I've really taken a step back this year to make sure that everything that I'm reading, I'm really taking it in, really reading it, This is a mix of my genres. I've read a lot of classics this year, surprisingly, but I know I've been in a memoir mood, so it's no surprise that that's there. And then I have, of course, like fantasy. And then here's my monthly graph so far. As you can see, there's a big dip there. I feel like that's normally how I read anyways. Like I go through a really cyclical nature of reading where I will devour and absorb as much as I possibly can, and then I will not touch a book for 3 entire months. And I feel like sometimes I like it better that way because that break is what gives me the time to process those things. I think that's why I took the reading goal down, because it allows me to have those breaks, whereas like in order to reach, what did I read last year? I think I read 89 books last year. In order to read that, I had to be reading around the clock, and it was like kind of tiring, honestly. I wasn't like reading things like how I wanted to. So, and I'm having a great reading year so far, like honestly a really good one, probably one of the best that I've had in recent years. Let's start this tag. The best book that I have read this year is Be Not Afraid of Love by Mimi Zhu. I read this for my how many books can I read in 24 hours, and this book, this is actually a secondary copy that I bought. My original copy is loaned out to a second friend that has read it since I read it about 4 months ago. It truly has just changed and impacted mine and other people's that I know's life in so many beautiful ways. Storygraph categorizes it as a memoir, and I guess in retrospect it is. Mimi Zhu, the author, uses their memories and their experiences of relationship abuse in order to communicate their perception of spirituality, love, feelings, emotion, and funnily enough, society as well. That was my favorite thing in here, in that it wasn't just about love. It wasn't just about how you feel. It was about how the things that you feel incorporate into the world around you, how the things that you feel are impacted by the society that we live in today. It truly touched my heart in a way that I have not had a book touch my heart in so long, and has become so special to me. I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't know that I was going to enjoy it this much. If you want to see, my journey reading it, you're welcome to go and click on that other video. But anybody that is a self-proclaimed worshiper of love needs to pick this up as soon as possible, because I think it's the most genuine representation I have seen of real love in my life as a self-proclaimed worshiper of love. Okay, the best sequel that I've read so far. I read the first one for my last video that I just put out. My partner picks my TBR. Then my partner read it too, and he got obsessed with it. We bought the second one. We bought the third one as well. I don't have it here with me though. These, obsessed. There's 6 of them. We've only gotten the first 3 so far. But the third one, it has been my favorite. The first one was great. It's a lot of setup in the first one, but then the action hits in the second one, and it just continues to escalate, and it's insane. The detailing in the artwork, in the panels, it's beautiful. Not only that, but Katsuhiro Otomoto, he is so amazing at making philosophical points based off of his character's actions. Like, he's showing you these deep and innate human qualities simply by the actions of his characters, and he represents things so well. It's so well done. And I mean, I know this is not news. I know that this is like one of the most popular like mangas of all time. I know I'm late to the party, but let me come to the party. Give me an invite, please. I promise I'll bring drinks and a good attitude. A new release that I want to read but haven't yet. I don't own it yet either. I am really looking forward to reading Yellowface. It seems like something that is actually more in my court than the other things that R.F. Kuang has written. I think Yellowface sounds like more my pace and style of writing. So I'm really excited to read Yellowface. I really am hoping to read it by the end of the year, but we'll just have to see how the money goes, as always. Also, I love that color, so I want that color on my bookshelf. My most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. First, Small Worlds by Caleb Azuma Nelson, who wrote Open Water, which I've read and I love, and I can't wait to read something else by him. Next, we have Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. I heard about this one from Books and Lala in her video about, I think, like new 2023 releases. It's like a psychological thriller with like clones of like a woman. It sounded really interesting. And I know that this one isn't coming out this year. It's coming out next year. In the beginning of next year though, so I'm just going to say it here, but An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I read A Diary of Blood last year, fell absolutely in love with it, and I cannot wait to read something more from S.T. Gibson because I have read all of their short stories and I have loved every word. It's exactly my type of writing. Like if I had an ideal writing style, it would probably be S.T. Gibson's, because it's just all the little details about writing that I love bottled down into one singular place. Read A Diary of Blood, and I'm excited for Education in Malice. Next, we have our biggest disappointment of this year, and this book was not only the biggest disappointment, but it was the biggest anger. It was the biggest sorrow, the biggest just everything. All of my hopes and dreams were dashed when I hated this book. Upstream by Mary Oliver. I really seriously thought that I was going to enjoy it. It was just poetry about nature, but this woman needs to know when to stop sharing. Not everybody needs to know everything. Definitely there were some things in here that just made me feel weird. It would have taken editing out of like maybe 5 total paragraphs, and this probably would have been like a 3 or 4. But like, I didn't need to hear about when she suckled on her cat's teat, or when she dug up the turtles that don't exist at the lake near her home anymore to eat the baby's eggs. She could have kept that to herself, and I would have thought better of her. So I guess maybe I should admire her for giving it all, but I don't. I'm just confused. I was loving it. The one in the beginning about time, like, amazing. I did the very beginning, but then I got to a point where just like I stopped caring, and it didn't really matter anymore, and couldn't stop imagining her eating turtles every time she talked about how much she loved the nature. My biggest surprise for this year was actually A Few Figs from Thistles by Edna St. Vincent Millay. I have this beautiful copy, original print. I don't know if it's the first edition. It is from the 1920s though. I picked it up because it's short and I just wanted something that was easy to consume. And I've heard so much about her poems and her poetry, and it cracked me up. I was laughing out loud, literally. Like, this woman is hysterical. She like should have stood up in front of a stage and did a comedy set, because it's better than literally anything that like most comedians are putting out right now. She is so funny, and that was why it was my biggest surprise, because I was going in expecting like longing gay sorrow, you know, as most old gay literature is, and it just wasn't like that. It was like gay joy, like queer joy. You know, like, and it's so wonderful to see things like that from periods of history so far gone, like, you know, literally 100 years ago. Like, this book is literally 100 years old. Isn't that so crazy? And it's in my hands right now. And it has seen, you know, Edna St. Vincent Millay and her passing lived beyond her. And she is hysterical. Read her poems. Her sonnets, not the best, honestly. But I feel like sonnets are not my favorite thing anyway, so maybe it is a personal preference, but also maybe sonnets just suck as a poetry device. So don't tell Shakespeare I said that. But everything else I really loved. A great surprise to have had. Next, we have a favorite new author. And let me tell you, I talked about this in my last vlog that I put out. But this is an actual new favorite author, like an author that I will forever treasure. Mr. Karl Ove Knausgaard. He wrote this season's quartet, Winter, Autumn, Spring, and Summer. It's a memoir chronicling a bunch of lessons that this man is writing to his forthcoming child. So it's not like a ponderance on new fatherhood. It is on his fourth child. And so he knows that he is deep in the hands of fatherhood, taking care of a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, I think, and then this new baby that's on the way. And he writes these beautiful vignettes that detail these beautiful and minuscule moments of our lives in order to communicate his perception of the world to his new child. He's writing down these thoughts so that he can eventually invoke them to his kids. His writing is stunning. It's so... I didn't expect to get pulled into an entire 4-book series. There was just something, an urge that was driving me, and I had the best reading experience. It took me maybe like 3 months to get through all of them, and it was just the most lovely thing to return to every time that I did. It was comforting, and it was honest. It was emotional, and because his writing is just so beautiful. Starts with the minute. He starts with an acorn or the sprinklers or the windows, and he takes you on this journey through thought to connect these minuscule parts of our lives, these almost irrelevant parts of our lives, to bigger pictures, to larger concepts, to... He gives importance to every single little piece of thing that we interact with. These are the second best thing that I've read, without a doubt. You know, Be Not Afraid of Love is a nonfiction, and so are these. I am in my nonfiction girly era, and I'm loving it. I am enjoying it so much. I feel like I'm learning so much about people. I learned so much reading these. Okay, here's the real tea on this new fictional crush, because I'm not really a fictional crush person. Chiyoko in Akira. The most badass woman, take no shit, slam you against the wall by ripping the door off its hinges, badass bitch. I love her. I love her. I want her to be my mommy. I want her to give me a baba. I want her to give me passy. I want her to hold me in my arm while I go to sleep, because she is my mommy. Yes, Katsuhiro Otomoto, the author, like, he just like throws her in there. Like, he doesn't give her much introduction. He just like throws her in the background, and then suddenly she is kicking everybody's ass. She can kick my ass too. A new fictional favorite character is mystery book. This is Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. My new favorite character is Mr. Badger. Everything about him, like his isolationism, all of it, it just made me so happy. He just seemed like somebody that I really wanted to be friends with. I felt so akin to Mr. Mole and being like, I need to be friends with Mr. Badger. I need to know him. I need to know this crazy and tough and smart and cool man. Level-headed Badger. Every line that he had I loved. Every scene that he was in was amazing. Genuine, true, caring, and a hermit, just like me. So I felt very, I felt some kinship there with Mr. Badger. A book that made you cry. There haven't been that many books this year that have made me cry. Be Not Afraid of Love was one of them, but I think the only other one was this one, Death of the Salesman. And I know it's not a book, I know it's a play, but I read it and it blew me away. And the thing is like, it's a complete story. Until you have read the very last word in the whole play, the full picture isn't there. Every word is essential, every detail means something. And as well, the introduction that was written in the beginning of this was the best introduction for any book I've ever read in my whole life. Sometimes an introduction is so boring that I just give up on it. But this one had me like enraptured, almost to the level that the play did. Like literally just here in the Penguin Classic Edition. If you ever want to pick this up, the introduction in this is fantastic and I really recommend it. Now, on the other side, a book that made me happy. This was one of the very first books I read for the year because I read the first book at the end of the last year. It's A Prayer for the Crown Shy. This is the second book of a monkey and robot story, which there's not going to be a third one. And like the fact that there's not supposed to be a third one literally makes me like this one and the first one less, because that's how essential I feel like a third one is, because of how unfinished that this one left the world. But that's like another thing. It still made me very happy. Like it made me so happy that I'm angry that there's not supposed to be another one. I would love to stay in this world for forever. It's about a post-apocalyptic world where the robots become sentient and they leave humans behind. In this, a robot emerges from the forest, meets a monk, and they set off around the world so that the robot can learn what happened since the robots left. And it's so full of joy and simplicity in its most beautiful form, and there needs to be a third one. The most beautiful book that I have bought this year, I'm actually cheating because it's two, but it's a set, so it's Priory of the Orange Tree, Day, Fall, Night. First of all, they're the same size, so I can be happy. I can be okay. I cannot have an aneurysm like I would if I had some of the other sets. That's not even the best part. So we've got these beautiful covers at the sprayed edges. My favorite part, the etching on the cover. But here's Private Orange Tree, and there's the back. And then, of course, just as beautiful, if not more beautiful, honestly, in verse, instead of silver, we have gold, a day of fall and night. Another quote, and also the back as well. I'm obsessed. I'm so obsessed. These are the broken binding editions. I saw the Illumicrate ones and I actually liked these ones better. They're not the signed editions. I missed the first drop. When Broken Binding came back and said, we have more extras, they're just not signed, I'm like, gimme, 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 gimme now. And they are everything. I love them. Some of my favorite and most beautiful books that I own. So thank you, Broken Binding. You're awesome. For this last question, the books that I need to read by the end of there, I think we're gonna do a little TBR because I do have a little TBR. So this stack, this is in no particular order, but these are just all books that I've picked up that I really have been wanting to read recently, just because the calling within me is urging me to read them. So the first one that I have is Rilke's Book of Hours. I have read a ton of Rilke's work, even though this one is his most famous. I have yet to read it. Next one that I have is The Aleph and Other Stories by Jorge Luis Borges. I've heard a lot of good things about Borges, and I have realized that I really enjoy psychologically weird stories, like Fever Dream, or just wacky scenarios and situations to make a point or prove a philosophy. And that's, you know, what Borges does in his writing, right? Also love this cover. It's to die for. The next book that I have is actually the one that is next up on my Read Around the World challenge, which is Weep Not My Child by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. I'm pretty sure that I'm saying that correctly. The author is from Kenya. I don't know if it is autobiographical, but Weep Not Child is a moving novel about the effects of the infamous Mau Mau uprising on the lives of ordinary men and women, and on one family in particular. So it really falls into the category of impactful stories from these places that I'm reading from. So I would love to cross Kenya off my list. As I said, I'm in my nonfiction era, so here we have The 100 Years' War on Palestine. This is a history of settler colonism and resistance from 1917 to 2017. I've heard great things about this book. I've heard that it really does a great job at going into depth on the history of Palestine and the very complex situation that is currently going on there in current times. I would love to know more. I would love to be educated more so that I can understand the struggles of this colonized people in order to be able to advocate for them better. That's what I'm hoping that this will help me and allow me to do. Another nonfiction, we have The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. First of all, I love this cover, that's why I went and bought it. But I love existentialism. I love Jean-Paul Sartre. I love Albert Camus. Existentialism is a philosophical train of thought that really strikes a chord with me. And so the fact that this woman was, you know, their colleague and only just now are her writings come out. Yeah, I have to read this as soon as possible. I'm so excited to be a hot girl and to read this. Next, I have Dracula. I believe my boyfriend and I are going to get to this in October. We're going to read it together because this is the Edward Gorey edition and we both love Edward Gorey. He's the artist that does the cover work and more of the artwork on the inside. As you can see here, we read the prologue, just the prologue for this, just randomly one night. I am amazed because I have tried to read Frankenstein a few times and every single time it's just been a little too dense for me. Not in a bad way, but in more so like it's just hard for me to get into it. I was hanging on every single word in Dracula. I would also like to finish Akira. That is a goal because I want to know what happens. I would hope I would know what happens by the end of this year because I need to know what happens now. But that is my mid-year book freakout time. First one that I've ever done. I'm so excited to keep reading for the rest of this year. I've had an amazing reading year and I have a lot of amazing reads planned for the rest of it. I'm happy to be here and I hope you really enjoyed this. Comment any thoughts that you had and you know, subscribe because I would love to see you back here. Have a happy reading. Good night.